Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Berger. I'm the Executive Director here, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to yet again another capacity crowd for bearing witness. Thank you all so much for being here. Today's program is a special one. It is, as all of our speakers have been, it is yet another perspective from lighting during the Holocaust. One of the reasons why this series is so critical and so important is that Georgia, sadly, is fourth in the nation for active hate groups. So it is important that we hear stories like this so that we can combat that hate and we can stop hate speech and increase tolerance in our own communities. So I applaud all of you for being here today for that. Thank you. I also want to take a moment to thank the Sara Giles Moore Foundation, who has very kindly and very generously covered everyone's admission today to this program. Their commitment to Holocaust education is second to none, and we really appreciate that. And now at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lily Kashensky-Baxter. She's the director of the Weinberg Center for Holocaust Education here at the Friedman Museum, and she'll be introducing our program. Again, thank you very much for being here.
Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Holocaust survivor Henry Friedman. Mr. Friedman's experience of the Holocaust began in 1944 when he was 21 years old and Nazi troops occupied the Hungarian town of Nagyvarad, where he had lived, happy and productive with his family. Jewish life in Mr. Friedman's hometown dates back to the 15th century. For 500 years, Jewish cultural, social, economic life had flourished in the town under various names and governed by various countries. There were Hebrew printing houses for newspapers and books, synagogues, schools, and cultural institutions. There were Jewish manufacturers, merchants, lawyers, physicians, and farmers. Even the chief of police in 1902 was a Jew. And in the municipal council, the Jewish community was fairly and fully represented. All this ended in the summer of 1944, when the German-Hungarian administration established a ghetto and in short order deported 25,000 Jews to their deaths. This once vital and thriving Jewish community was decimated. This form of ghettoization and deportation to death camps, mainly Auschwitz-Birkenau, was replicated in hundreds of other Jewish communities throughout Hungary. And by mid-July 1944, the only Jewish community left in Hungary was in Budapest, the capital. And all this in the last year of the Second World War and the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the attempt by the German government during World War II, aided by collaborators in almost every country they conquered, to murder every single person of Jewish descent in Europe. By war's end, they had killed 6 million Jewish people and over 1 million of them children. Mr. Friedman lived through those chaotic, broken times in the last year of the Second World War. He was not only the target of anti-Semites, but also the unarmed soldier, forced laborer, or prisoner of whatever army was in control at the moment. He survived countless adversities to rise triumphant, as you'll see. Mr. Friedman has lived in Atlanta for 65 years, arriving in 1950, sponsored by the Atlanta Jewish Federation. He met and married his true love, Sherry, and together they have one child, a son, Steve. We'll begin our program with the premiere of a short documentary the Friedman has produced about Henry Friedman in partnership with the Savannah College of Art and Design. After which Mr. Friedman will speak at greater depth about some of his experiences and observations, as well as entertain questions from the audience. I'd like to thank Lori Shapiro, the chair of our Volunteer Museum Educators, for assisting Mr. Friedman during the Q&A. And for the Q&A, please line up at the mic on the left side of the room, where I'll be standing. Now, let us begin.
I don't know how many of you are aware of the gravity of the Holocaust, when 14 million innocent people were killed for no reason. Of these 14 million, there were 6 million Jews died, murdered, strictly because they were born Jewish. Thank you so much again to hear my story. I made a little note to remember. Anyway, it is beautiful production, very well made, but kind of difficult for a production to show mine raw emotion. I remember when I left Budapest on the way go home. It took me 2 days to arrive home. By that time, it was just about a whole year since I left my home. I dreamed so many times about homecoming. Finally, I'm home. I knock on the door opens, and I just look around. I recognize our furniture the way I left it. I just look around, and the man who opened the door asked me, "Can I help you?" I say, "This is my home. I live here." He slammed the door in my face. This is not. Standing on the sidewalk, weak. I remember not far from there, there's a hospital. I went to that hospital, it was the right one. They took care of me. They gave me a bed. And for the first time, I realized that for a whole year, I lived in a vacuum. I knew nothing was going on. I knew nothing about concentration camps, nothing about crematorium. I lived in an illusion. After a war is over, everybody coming back from different direction, and we will have a long story to say. It didn't happen that way. It was maybe a dozen individual like myself coming back from different locations. We sat in an empty room, staring to a wall, which was a bulletin board. And one day, I read, Steve Friedman was cited. Steve Friedman is on the way home. Steve? That's my brother. I knew anyone who will make it, they have to be Steve. He's young. He was only 2 years older than myself. I'm excited. I made arrangement in the hospital that the bed be pulled next to mine for Steve. I didn't know what condition he will be, mentally or physically, but I know one thing, that he needs me, and I need him. I'm excited. That evening, someone approaches me. I hate to burst your bubble, but you, Brother Steve, was with me. He doesn't know for sure that he died of the bullet or he died of typhus, which was very, very rampant. But you, brothers, not coming back. Steve Friedman, who's on the way back, must be a namesake. I took it very, very hard. I was crying for hours and hours. When I made up my mind, I have to leave, I have to run away. About 18 months ago, I read an article in a magazine, Urban Renewal in Poland, in the capital of Poland, Warsaw. During the excavation, they unearthed like a time capsule, like 2 5-gallon metal milk and stuff with notes, hundreds and hundreds of notes. The majority of notes were kind of all alike. They was afraid for dying because they know they're dying over there. Dead body and dead people all over the Warsaw ghetto on the street for maltreatment, malnutrition. The biggest fear was that they know that Germans will win the war. Probably the time capsule was buried in 1942 or 1943 when the Germans conducted a blitzkrieg, a lightning war. They conquered one nation after the other one. So they know that the Germans will win the war. The biggest fear was that the future generation will never know how people lived and how they died. People died because of religion. Since the Germans will win the war, everything will be swept under the carpet. When I read that, it came to my head, maybe there's a reason why I did not perish with that many millions of innocent people. Maybe I have a duty. I have mission. I have no obligation to speak about it, even if it's unpleasant. That the Holocaust never to be forgotten, and those victims will never be, the memory will never be swept under the carpet. And for that reason, I'm speaking about it. I recall that when I first was invited to speak at Agnes Scott College here in Decatur, since I don't read from a script, many times I don't say the same thing all around. I mentioned that in July 1944, in the big factory where I was working, I received a postcard. I received a postcard from my sister, Mother and I peeling potato, Clary. That was her name. I was very happy they are alive. I sent the postcard to my brother-in-law. They're alive. Auschwitz, the Polish name for Auschwitz, sounded to me like Switzerland. I figured maybe they escaped somehow in Switzerland. I was happy. So when I told the story about the postcard at Agnes Scott College, 2 students jumped up. Do you know the background of the postcard? Background? After that many years, what I found out about Auschwitz, I feel like I'm kind of dreaming to receive a postcard. So they were telling me, when they were in the gas chamber, they used psychological panic control to keep the victims quiet. They told them, now you will enter the shower, undress, put your belongings in a neat pile, and if you have shoelaces, tie your shoes together, because when you come out of the shower, find everything in order. And that time was handed out pencil and postcard. Who want to send a message. So probably my sister asked for a postcard. She wanted to send me a message. Mother and I peeling potato, which was very, very brilliant, because if she would write anything half realistic, the censorship was not allowed through. But I got a message. Even though I had difficulty to read because it was very shaky, very just like a first grader hold a pencil in the hand for the first time. But probably mentally she was quite strong. She wrote down my address, the battalion number, Weiss Manfred Industries, Budapest, and reading it several times. Probably original was, the postcard was soaked with tears. I got a message that till the last minute, my sister and mother were together. From the rubber stamp, I knew that they were in Auschwitz. And more or less, what I'm reading, don't look for us. We don't have a site in a cemetery. We don't have any headstones. Through the chimneys we went up to the sky. Don't look for us. In 1994, I went to Israel. Through papers, I read that Israel organizing a 50th anniversary of the Hungarian Holocaust. My wife, my son, we flew to Israel. We spent 2 weeks there. The first night, we were addressed by that time Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The next day, we loaded up on buses. We were taken to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and we were recognized there. During the conference, I bought a couple books. One of them, the biography of Raoul Wallenberg. Another book, a very, very thick book, Oradea, a city of yesterday. That was the name of my hometown, Oradea. And I learned so many things from that book, what I didn't know, even though I lived in that city. It was many, many pages listing the names of the people who never returned from the Holocaust, among them my family. In that book also was an article about the falling Israeli soldiers who died during different battles, like a Suez Canal battle, the War of Independence, the Golan Heights. And in that book, I find a name of a Hungarian Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel Imre Ravitsky. He was the one who came up looking for volunteers with mechanical background. He was the one who tried to save Jewish life just like Raoul Wallenberg. Because of him, I wound up in that big factory in Budapest. I would like to remember his name and quite a few good people. The name of this lieutenant colonel is mentioned as a righteous general in Yad Vashem, in the big museum in Israel. In closing, I want to pay tribute to my grandmother, whom I loved. And I recall her like a pair of bookends. She was there for me when I was very young, probably 2 or 3 years old. Came down with a very grave, contagious scarlet fever. My mother, she still had my brother and my sister, and I was very contagious. My grandmother took me to the hospital. I remember. Horse-driven carriage. It was very cold. She covered me with several layers of blanket. She held me very tight to her body to be warm. And he was chanting or praying to comfort me. When I arrived at the hospital, very strong smell of disinfectant. But I remember wonderful, delicious cookies, and cookies and cookies. My parents came to visit me. I saw them through a window. And the closing part of the bookends, my grandmother, kind of pious religious man, who came to the house and who blessed me, who prayed for me. And I feel like armed with the reading and the blessing, I was sent off to face the Holocaust. I was sent with a blessing. When the whole thing was over, with divine power, I returned alive. And I'm hoping and wishing for an everlasting peace. Thank you so much to hear my story. Thank you. Please. I am not a celebrity. I'm just a messenger. Thank you so much to receiving me, to see me. Thank you. No, I'm not doing it.
Okay, questions? Statements?
This is a statement. I just want to tell you you're a remarkable person. Everybody who survived this is absolutely incredible. God bless you.
Thank you so much. But the pain is with me even today after that many years. I will never forget it. And for that reason, sometimes I had to fight to be able to come to speak wherever I'm invited. Next.
Thank you so much. Sorry, a little emotional. You kind of stirred up some feelings there. We began coming to these talks actually through my teenage daughter. And tell me what to say to her and to her friends when they face hate talk, discrimination. She's a fighter. and she's a great kid. Tell me how to help her keep that alive.
My suggestion is to remind her what hate, prejudice, intolerance can create. Actually, we all created by the image of Almighty. We are all our brother's keeper. We cannot accept that awful thing like a hate. We have to accept each other just the way they are and to live in peace.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Henry.
Hi.
I remember speaking with you once, and I asked you if you were angry. And you told me something really remarkable. Do you remember what you said to me that time? And could you tell me why you're not angry?
I cannot afford to be angry. I cannot repeat the same thing what the German did to us. It's very unproductive. We cannot afford that luxury to be angry. We just have to, if we don't agree with something, to pass by, because there's always a larger picture. And to be angry, there's no room for it.
So Henry, I've had the pleasure of knowing you since being a docent and hearing your story many times, and hopefully considered a friend that we've been together outside the museum. And your story is remarkable, but it doesn't end with your coming to the United States. I would appreciate maybe your sharing some of what you did when you first got here. And I know from some of the people that I recognize in the audience, Henry has been involved in civil rights issues and human rights issues from day one. And I don't know if what your experience may have developed that interest, but if you would speak to your life once you got to the United States and your involvement in the things once you were here.
I arrived to Atlanta, Georgia, May 1950. It was a hot summer. I met some girls. They had automobiles, and they took me to a lake to cool off. I don't know how many of you from Atlanta remember. Imagine Piedmont Road, St. Marcus Boulevard, Lindbergh Drive. All that area in 1950 was a lake. With a big lake with sailboats, with sandy beach. Was a beautiful place to cool off. That evening when I left, I noticed a big sign. No dogs or Jews welcome here. 1950. So I'm so glad. I consider myself like a native. I see so many changes since 1950. Thank God. They changed us for the best. We still have a long way to go. Let me just tell a little story what I heard not very long ago. I mean, I knew about it, but brought back to me. When Martin Luther King received his Nobel Peace Prize, Rabbi Rothschild, a rabbi from a temple, and different dignitaries, they gave him a party, a welcoming party, at the Dickler Plaza Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. The Klan was very, very strong at that time. And somebody got a message in a hotel, evacuate the hotel because the hotel will be bombed. And they were thinking about not to celebrate. Among the guests were the first African-American senator, Senator Leroy Johnson. And he made a phone call to the Mayor Ivan Allen. Ivan Allen called out the GBI. The party continued and nothing happened. We still have a long way to go, but I've seen quite a few advances. I remember what I was told. Several industries, a Jew could not advance, and no Jewish people could have a career higher than a teller in a bank, and no insurance company would give an agent to a Jewish agent. They was not accepted. But all those things passed, and we see advances. Let's hope that will continue. Next.
Hi, thank you for coming here to speak to us today. I have actually a couple of questions. One would be, how did you get from your hometown to the United States? Were you in a displaced person?
I'm a good swimmer.
Good swimmer. I know for many Jews after the Holocaust, it was very difficult to get in here. I have relatives in Toronto because they couldn't get into the United States, for instance. So what procedure was there? I mean, how did you do
When I left Bremenhaven, a port city in Germany, I knew that I would be going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, very heavy industrious place with my mechanical background. But when I arrived to Boston on a troop carrier, I was told that the plans were changed and for me to come to Atlanta, Georgia. That's why I wound up at Atlanta, Georgia. I had some disappointment. It was very, very hot. And we stopped at the railroad station in Washington, D.C. And I had a few coins in my pocket. When I came on the troop carrier on ship, I was assigned, I didn't have to, but I was assigned and I accepted to work in a laundry. And I was collecting soiled linen, taking it back to the laundry. And the man in charge was a Filipino. And for gratitude, he gave me some coins, American coins, to be familiar when I arrived here. He gave me a penny, he gave me a nickel, he gave me a dime, he gave me a quarter, half a dollar, and a silver dollar. So when I arrived to Washington, D.C., it was very, very hot. We were waiting for a long time to come back to come to Atlanta. On a vending machine, I saw root beer. Beer. I like beer. I will have a wonderful glass of cold beer. I thought Root was a brand name. It was a big disappointment. Any other question?
The other question I had was from the person sitting next to me who wanted to know if you still had that postcard from your sister.
Do you still have the postcard from your sister?
No, I mailed it to my brother-in-law since it came from his wife. He should be entitled to it. I mailed it to him.
We have one more question.
Do you have any other mail from your family?
Did you have any other mail from your family?
No, no. That's the only one.
Please join me in thanking Henry Friedman. If you will take a moment on your seats, there is an evaluation form. There are two sides to that evaluation form. If you could take a moment and fill it out, it is the best way of making a contribution to the Bremen Museum without actually opening your wallet. Thank you so much for coming today. We genuinely appreciate you being here. Again. Oh, we have one more person. I'm sorry, pardon me.
Mr. Friedman, I just wanted to ask one question.
Yes, Rabbi.
I wanted to be incognito. There's one person here who brought you here today. In a real sense, brought you here today and brought you here today in a different sense. And you're a great man, as we all know. Behind every great man is an even greater woman. I'd like to ask you, if I can, just a last question. Mrs. Friedman is an incredibly great woman, as you would admit. Could I ask you to share a word or two about her, how she brought you here today? Not in the car, what a great driver she is, but how she has taken care of you and brought you here today. God bless you, and God bless her.
Thank you. She is a wonderful caregiver for me. I hate to admit it in public, but she's fantastic for me.